Listen closely because this is something most men completely misunderstand. They think that when they're not around, nothing really happens. That absence is just empty time, a pause with no real impact. But that couldn't be further from the truth. When you're not present, her mind doesn't go silent. It becomes active. It starts replaying moments, analyzing conversations, and revisiting how you made her feel. The space you leave behind doesn't stay empty. It gets filled with thoughts, emotions, and impressions about you. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about understanding a natural psychological process. Human beings don't just connect through constant interaction. They connect through reflection, memory, and emotional processing. And often, those things become stronger in your absence than in your presence. Most men make the mistake of thinking that more attention equals more attraction. So they try to always be available, always texting, always showing up. But what they don't realize is that constant presence can sometimes reduce emotional impact, while the right amount of space can deepen it. When you understand how absence actually works, everything changes. You stop chasing reactions and start creating meaningful impressions. You begin to see why certain moments stay with her, why she thinks about you when you're gone, and why distance can sometimes make feelings stronger instead of weaker. In this video, we're going to break down the 7 key emotional responses that happen when you're not around and how understanding them can transform the way you build connection. Before we go deeper, you need to understand one simple truth. Absence is not the same as disconnection. In fact, in many cases, it does the opposite. When you step away, the interaction doesn't end. It shifts. Instead of happening externally through conversations and shared moments, it continues internally in her mind. This is where emotions are processed more deeply. This is where meaning is created. Human psychology works in a very specific way. When something is constantly available, the brain adapts to it quickly. It becomes familiar, predictable, and sometimes even taken for granted. But when there's space, when something is no longer immediately accessible, the mind pays more attention to it. That space creates contrast, and contrast creates clarity. She begins to notice what's missing, not just your presence, but how you made her feel. The tone of your voice, the way you listened, the energy you brought into the interaction, all of it becomes more noticeable in your absence than it was in the moment. This is why absence, when natural and balanced, doesn't weaken connection. It gives it room to breathe, grow, and take on deeper emotional meaning. When you're no longer right in front of her, something important begins to happen. Her mind starts searching for answers. Curiosity is one of the first and strongest responses to your absence. She begins replaying your conversations, not casually, but with attention to detail. The way you said something, the timing of your responses, even small gestures that didn't seem important in the moment, suddenly they carry more weight. She may ask herself questions like, "What did he really mean by that?" Or, "Why did that moment feel different?" This isn't overthinking, it's emotional processing. Curiosity pulls her deeper into the experience of you without you needing to do anything. The less immediate clarity she has, the more her mind tries to fill in the gaps. And as she does that, she becomes more mentally and emotionally engaged. This is where many men make a mistake. They feel the need to explain everything, to constantly update, to remove all uncertainty. But when you overexpose yourself, you remove the very space where curiosity grows. Mystery doesn't mean being distant or confusing. It simply means not revealing everything all at once, letting conversations end naturally, not always rushing to fill silence, allowing her to sit with her thoughts about you. Because the truth is, when someone fully understands everything about you too quickly, their mind has nothing left to explore. And when there's nothing left to explore, attention begins to fade. But when there are small, unanswered questions, when there are layers to your personality that reveal themselves over time, curiosity stays alive. And that curiosity turns into investment. She starts thinking about you more often, not because you're trying to occupy her mind, but because her mind is naturally drawn to understand you better. And the more she thinks, the more she feels connected. That's the quiet power of curiosity. It builds attraction in your absence, without force, without pressure, and without you needing to chase it. After curiosity begins to pull her mind toward you, something deeper starts to develop. Longing. Longing is not just thinking about someone, it's feeling their absence. When you're no longer there, the emotional experience you created doesn't disappear. Instead, it lingers. Her mind starts replaying not just what you said, but how you made her feel. The comfort, the excitement, the sense of connection. Those feelings don't fade immediately. In fact, without new interactions to replace them, they often become stronger. This is where many men get confused. They assume that if she isn't reaching out or constantly messaging, her interest is fading. But in reality, silence can be a space where emotions deepen. She's not always expressing what she feels, but she's processing it. Longing works through memory and emotion combined. She may find herself thinking about your voice at random moments, remembering a specific conversation, or even associating everyday situations with you. These small reminders build an emotional presence, even when you're physically absent. But here's the key: longing needs space to grow. If you're always available, always initiating, always filling every gap with communication, there's no room for that emotional pull to develop. There's no time for her to miss you. And without that feeling of missing, the connection can stay surface level. On the other hand, too much distance without meaningful interaction can break the connection entirely. So it's not about disappearing, it's about balance. When your presence is consistent and meaningful, and your absence is natural and unforced, longing begins to build in a healthy way. It reaches a point where your return feels significant, not ordinary. And that's what makes the difference. Because when longing is present, she's not just happy to see you again, she feels it. As longing settles in, the next phase begins: reflection. This is where her mind shifts from simply feeling your absence to understanding what you mean to her. When you're not around, she naturally starts reviewing the connection. She replays conversations, revisits shared moments, and looks at your behavior from a broader perspective. It's no longer just about how she felt in the moment. It's about what those moments represent. She may begin asking herself deeper questions. How does he treat me? How do I feel when I'm around him? Is this connection different from others? These questions aren't always conscious, but they shape her perception of you in a powerful way. Reflection is where attraction becomes more than just emotion. It becomes evaluation. This is also where consistency matters most. If your actions have been genuine, respectful, and aligned with your words, her reflection will reinforce a positive image of you. But if there has been confusion or inconsistency, this is where it becomes more noticeable. Another natural part of reflection is comparison, not in a negative sense, but in a human sense. She may unconsciously compare how she feels with you versus how she feels with others. And if your presence created a stronger emotional impact, that difference becomes clear. What makes reflection so powerful is that it happens without pressure. You're not trying to convince her of anything. She's arriving at her own conclusions based on her own experience, and conclusions that people reach on their own tend to be stronger and more lasting. This is why absence, when balanced with meaningful interaction, allows the connection to deepen. It gives her the space to recognize your value, not because you told her, but because she felt it and understood it herself. After reflection comes something even more powerful: appreciation. This is where she begins to truly recognize the value of your presence in her life. When you're consistently around, even if your intentions are good, your presence can start to feel normal, not less important, just familiar. But when there's space, when you're not constantly there, her mind naturally shifts toward what's missing, and that's where appreciation begins to grow. She starts noticing the details she may have overlooked before: the way you listened, the effort you put into conversations, the small things you remembered about her. These moments, which might have seemed ordinary at the time, now carry more emotional weight. This happens because absence creates contrast. When she interacts with others or goes through her daily routine, she may not feel the same level of connection or attention she felt with you. And that difference highlights your uniqueness. It makes your presence stand out more clearly in her mind. Appreciation also changes behavior in subtle ways. She may become more responsive, more engaged, or more willing to initiate contact, not because she's trying to prove anything, but because she recognizes the value of what she experienced with you. This is why constant availability isn't always the strongest approach. When something is always there, the mind doesn't feel the need to evaluate its importance. But when there's space, the mind begins to measure what that presence meant. The key here is authenticity. Appreciation only grows if your actions were genuine to begin with. You can't create it artificially. But when your presence is meaningful and your absence is natural, appreciation forms on its own, and it strengthens the connection in a way that constant interaction alone cannot achieve. As appreciation builds, it naturally transitions into something more intense, desire. This is where emotional connection and attraction begin to merge on a deeper level. Desire isn't just about physical attraction, it's about how strongly she feels drawn to you, mentally, emotionally, and even subconsciously. And interestingly, this feeling often grows more in your absence than in constant interaction. Why? Because absence creates anticipation. When you're not immediately available, her mind starts to imagine future moments with you, conversations that haven't happened yet, time you might spend together, the way it might feel when you see each other again. These mental scenarios aren't random. They're driven by the emotional impact you've already created, and anticipation intensifies desire. Instead of being satisfied by constant access, her emotions stay active. They don't settle, they build. She begins to look forward to interacting with you again rather than simply experiencing you in the moment. This is where many men unintentionally weaken attraction. By always being present, always initiating, always available, they remove anticipation completely. There's nothing to look forward to because everything is already happening. But when there's a healthy balance, meaningful interaction combined with natural space, desire has room to grow. It becomes something she feels internally, not something that needs to be constantly triggered from the outside. Another important factor is emotional memory. She remembers how you made her feel, valued, understood, energized, and those feelings become associated with you. Over time, that association strengthens her attraction in a way that goes beyond surface-level interest. Desire built this way is more stable. It's not based on constant stimulation, but on genuine emotional impact. So when you reappear, it's not just another interaction, it carries weight. It feels exciting, intentional, and emotionally charged, and that's what makes desire powerful. It grows quietly, but it shows up strongly. Once desire begins to surface, absence often introduces a subtle yet powerful emotional state, vulnerability. This isn't about weakness, it's about emotional sensitivity and awareness of what your presence, or lack thereof, means to her. When you're away, she starts noticing the gaps in her daily life, the comfort, attention, and energy you naturally provide. These aren't always conscious thoughts. They often manifest internally as reflection, longing, and emotional evaluation. She may find herself asking questions like, "How much do I miss him?" Or, "What does he really mean to me?" Her mind examines the value of your connection and measures her feelings without external pressure. Vulnerability also strengthens emotional honesty. In your absence, she may confront emotions she hadn't fully acknowledged while you were present. This self-examination allows her to align her feelings with her desires, creating a stronger, more authentic emotional bond. It's a chance for her to recognize how deeply your presence affects her, which in turn reinforces attachment and emotional investment. This state can subtly influence behavior as well. She may become more introspective, reflective, or attentive in her communications with you. These responses aren't forced. They're a natural outcome of her processing the emotional space created by your absence. For men, understanding vulnerability is crucial. It's not manipulation. It's allowing natural psychological dynamics to unfold. When you step back thoughtfully, you provide the opportunity for her to notice the qualities that make you significant, reinforcing desire, admiration, and emotional connection. Timing and consistency are key. Too much absence can create frustration or detachment, while too little may prevent this deeper reflection. Balanced correctly, absence becomes a tool to cultivate emotional depth, making each subsequent interaction feel meaningful, impactful, and deeply resonant. In essence, Vulnerability highlights her emotional reliance on you, not in a needy way, but in a way that intensifies her investment and strengthens the bond naturally. Absence doesn't weaken connection. It often strengthens it in ways that constant presence cannot achieve. Connection is not just about being physically close, it's emotional, mental, and sometimes even subtle or spiritual. When you're away, she has the space to reflect on the depth and quality of your bond. During your absence, she mentally replays shared experiences, moments of laughter, meaningful conversations, and times when she felt understood or valued. These mental rehearsals reinforce the emotional significance of your presence, making her feel closer to you even when you're not physically there. She begins to recognize the impact you have on her thoughts, feelings, and overall life experience. Connection is further enhanced by anticipation. As she looks forward to seeing or interacting with you again, her mind prepares emotionally. This preparation increases the perceived intensity of your presence when you return. Every smile, gesture, or word carries more weight because she has internally rehearsed and valued your interactions in your absence. Men often underestimate this process because they focus on immediate feedback or responses. They may think that absence risks weakening attachment. In reality, strategic absence allows her to internalize your value, reinforcing attachment without constant effort from you. Consistency and authenticity during presence are critical. When your interactions are confident, respectful, and meaningful, her reflection on these moments magnifies their impact. The memories she recalls while you're away carry more emotional resonance, deepening her attachment and investment in the relationship. Connection also allows her to compare your qualities with others she meets, reinforcing what makes you unique. This mental comparison strengthens her recognition of your value, loyalty, and the emotional significance of your bond. When you return, the connection feels natural, magnetic, and deeply satisfying because it has been reinforced internally through reflection, longing, appreciation, and desire. Mastering connection through absence is about balance. Presence builds trust and familiarity. Absence deepens emotional and psychological attachment. Together, they create a bond that is resilient, meaningful, and intensely magnetic, ensuring that every interaction feels intentional and memorable. Understanding how a woman experiences your absence gives you a powerful advantage in relationships. Most men assume that constant presence is the only way to maintain connection, but the truth is the opposite. Absence creates mental and emotional space that allows desire, reflection, longing, appreciation, vulnerability, and deeper connection to grow naturally. When you step away thoughtfully, you're not playing games. You're giving her the opportunity to notice your value, assess her feelings, and deepen her emotional investment without pressure. Every thoughtful interaction you've had before your absence gains weight, and her mind begins to replay these moments, reinforcing attachment and desire. Absence amplifies curiosity, encouraging her to think about you, analyze your actions, and reflect on what makes your bond unique. Longing emerges naturally as she notices the gap created by your absence, strengthening emotional attachment. Reflection allows her to internalize your qualities, appreciating the impact you have on her life. Appreciation grows as she recognizes the meaningful moments you've shared. Vulnerability surfaces, creating deeper emotional sensitivity, while desire intensifies both mentally and physically. Finally, connection becomes stronger because her mind reinforces the emotional and psychological significance of your bond. Strategically balancing presence and absence is key. Too much absence may lead to frustration, while too little can weaken curiosity and longing. Mastery comes from understanding timing, consistency, and authenticity. When used thoughtfully, absence transforms into a tool that strengthens attraction, reinforces respect, and creates emotional resonance that lasts. By embracing these principles, you position yourself as a man who commands attention, admiration, and desire effortlessly. Every interaction becomes more meaningful, every return more impactful, and every bond more resilient. Absence is not a risk. It is a strategic opportunity to cultivate deeper emotional engagement, intensify connection, and make your presence magnetic, memorable, and irreplaceable.